workers who went out last night into the cold, trudging through sleet and snow away from their families, driving in difficult conditions on the front lines, all so that Chicagoans could wake up this morning with minimal disruption to their morning routines, despite the fact that there were a significant snowfall that occurred last night. Chicago, if you see Streets and Sands workers today, please take the time and stop and to thank them for their diligence and hard work and commitment to our city. I also want to give a special shout out to our engineers, our mechanics, and all of our 2FM team. They're out there making repairs and making sure that the heat is on. 2FM put in the work to prepare our fleet so that they were ready to be deployed when we needed them. That's the quiet behind the scenes work that happens not with cameras or with photographs, but it is incredibly crucial to the vibrancy of our city. DWM is out there keeping the water running. I can't say enough about how hard our city workers are showing up for the people of Chicago so that your commute could be a little bit easier this morning, and of course, a whole lot safer. Chicago, if you see city workers today out there in the cold, please tell them how much you appreciate their hard work. And look, this certainly relates to our budget as well. We hear a lot of calls for cuts, and people like to refer to them as efficiencies. But folks get real quiet when we ask them to provide some of the specifics. And the reality is our city services are essential. Whether it's a snowstorm, icy roads, or thunderstorm or flooding, we will continue to see extreme weather due to climate change, so we need to ensure that we have the staff that we need to meet this reality. Chicagoans do not want to see our snow plowing reduced. They do not want to see less workers out there working in the night so that their mornings can be better. Less workers means that our city streets will be less safe for drivers and pedestrians, and nobody wants that. We had 250 salt spreaders out last night and into this morning. We are focused on the main routes now, and Chicagoans can expect us to focus our attention to the neighborhoods this afternoon. The careful planning and diligent preparation of Commissioner Stollard, our Deputy Mayor for Infrastructure and Services, Lori Lipson, our OEMC Director, Velez, and our DFSS Commissioner, Angela Green, and all of our city departments who coordinated across departments to show up for Chicagoans should be thanked again. We appreciate them for their hard work. Now, I would also like to take this opportunity to address the tragic incident that took place on Saturday afternoon. An armed robbery occurred in the Little Village neighborhood, and after an altercation with the victims, the gunman shot and killed 2 people. We believe they may have been a father and a son. This is a senseless tragedy, and it's heartbreaking. It's a reminder of our urgency around our work to reduce and end gun violence in our beloved city. Our hearts and our prayers are with the family of the victims. There are no words to express how devastating of a loss this is. I've spoken directly with the superintendent, Superintendent Snelling, about this incident. An investigation is underway, and we will be monitoring this tragedy, this incident closely. The police responded and were on the scene within minutes. I urge anyone who has any information about this incident to please come forward. Now, it's also important to note that there has been a substantial drop-off in the number of calls to 911 in the Latino communities since the immigration raids started 2 months ago. There's been a 21% drop-off in 911 calls in the Little Village area alone. And this is why we have been steadfast about upholding our welcoming city ordinance. For this exact reason, because when you call 911, they say, "What's your emergency?" They don't say, "What's your immigration status?" And that's because we need people to report crimes. We need them to know that no matter who they are, if you are the witness or the victim of a crime, we need to know the information to apprehend the suspects as quickly as possible. And this weekend, we also saw reports of DHS, of alleged shots fired at federal agents. Now, we don't have much information on this particular incident. Unfortunately, Bavino and his team have absolutely no credibility because of the repeated lies both to the courts and to the public, so we have no way to verify the reports. Federal authorities are investigating that incident. We also had an incident where protesters, with valid anger and frustration at the reckless actions of ICE, were aggressive towards CPD officers. One officer was injured by a vehicle accidentally hitting them as they were trying to leave, and other officers sustained minor injuries as well. Look, one of the biggest threats of these ICE raids is not just about immigration. These raids are meant to be provocative. They are trying to incite chaos, and they are putting our police officers right in the middle of it to clean up the mess that they are creating. We cannot allow the actions of these reckless Border Patrol agents to undermine the hard and steady work that we have done to rebuild trust between law enforcement and the communities that they serve. CPD was not and will not be involved with any civil immigration enforcement, period. But when they respond to any scene, their job is to get to the scene and to get the scene under control, to manage traffic, and to maintain the peace to the best of their ability. Superintendent Snelling and I have talked through this incident, and we will look closely at it to ensure that our welcoming city ordinance is being fully upheld and make any adjustments as needed. And finally, I need to say that I was certainly disturbed, as many Chicagoans were, to see the video of a 1-year-old child who was hit with a pepper spray ball, or hit with pepper spray. We will not be lectured about public safety when you have individuals who are masked and who are pepper spraying children, tear gassing our police officers. The chaos and cruelty will continue until we get Bavino out of our city. Thank you all for being patient with me this morning. I know that was a lot to cover, and so now I will pass it to our Commissioner for the Department of Family and Support Services, Angela Green, who will briefly offer up steps that we are taking to protect the most vulnerable population in our city in the midst of the storm. And then after that, I will take any and all of your questions. Commissioner?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Angela Green, and I serve as the Commissioner of the Chicago Department of Family and Support Services. At DFSS, we're committed to serving our most vulnerable residents here in the city, from birth to seniors. In times of extreme weather like we're experiencing now, we make every effort in partnership with our city departments to keep all residents safe. When temperatures fall to 32 degrees or below, we activate our warming centers. These include 6 community service centers located throughout the city, as well as 21 senior centers across the city. Today, all warming centers are activated during standard operating hours. These are warm, safe places the public can seek respite from the cold. All residents are welcomed at our community service centers. All seniors are welcomed at our senior centers. And we take an additional step of extending hours at Garfield Community Service Center beyond standard hours, business hours, when the code is expected to last several days, which in this case, it is not at this time. Robocalls went out to over 31,000 senior citizens yesterday, offering safety tips after the National Weather Service released a winter storm warning. The call recipients are seniors who participate in DFSS programs whose contact information we have on file. If seniors are in need of assistance and resources, seniors or their caregivers can call 311 or our Senior Services Helpline number directly at 312-744-4016. Once again, that's 312-744-4016. All residents in need of assistance are encouraged to call 311 for connection to shelter or to find the nearest warming center. Residents should call 311 to report insufficient heat in a building. In addition, residents can call 311 to request senior well-being checks or crisis checks for an unhoused neighbor. Our department's homeless outreach and prevention team and outreach delegates were notified yesterday of the winter storm warning and have been out offering warming supplies, connection to shelter, and assistance in accessing warming centers to people residing outdoors. Families seeking shelter can go to the Emergency Homeless Assessment and Response Center, or EHART, to request a placement, and that is located at 924 North Christina Avenue. Single adults seeking shelter can visit the Shelter Placement and Resource Center, or SPARC, located at 2241 South Halsted Street. We encourage all residents to use caution during this time and this period of extreme weather. And please do reach out to us if you're in need of assistance. We are here to help. Thank you. Now turn it back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. We also are joined by, and I apologize, our Budget Director, Annette Guzman. Please, you all make yourself comfortable, just in case, these individuals have lots of questions. All right, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
And I just want another quick note that we did increase our beds availability by 126% of last year's budget. So really encouraging the people of Chicago, if you are aware of someone that is in need of shelter, we have invested significantly into our shelter bed operation. So please take advantage of the city services that we fought hard for in the budget to secure.
Okay, we'll do one question, one follow-up. If you have a question for one of the commissioners or the budget director, just, call that out.
Thanks. This could be for either the mayor or budget director. The package that passed the Senate to reopen the government includes language that would appear to ban the type of hemp products that you're looking to tax and put some regulations around. Do you think it's still, appropriate or responsible to include 10 million in 2026 when there's so much uncertainty over that?
It is. It is responsible to put forth a revenue idea based upon the current law, right? As of date, that law hasn't changed. We will be monitoring that closely, and if anything changes, we'll make adjustments accordingly.
On the Ernst & Young hearing that's about to happen, since you put out your proposal, has there been anything else included in that you've revisited and think you might include in terms of upcoming amendments? Something that I don't think this would be a 2026 savings, but something that keeps being brought up in budget hearings is centralizing the procurement process. It's decentralized now. Is that something you are looking forward to doing, and what kind of savings does that bring in either 2026 or future years?
Thank you. Director Guzman?
I encourage you to watch the hearing that's about to happen. I want to be really clear because I think there's been a lot of misinformation about the options that are included in this budget. We are starting now a lot of the options in 2026 that will bear fruit in savings in 2027 and beyond. As it relates to procurement, centralization is on the table, and we're going to look at that. But it takes time for us to implement options because, frankly, our structures and our operations didn't get here overnight. They didn't get here in 1 year. And so we are working really closely with both the Department of Procurement Services as well as the Department of Finance to update our systems, to update our governance structures, and to begin to look at how we leverage our purchasing power, frankly, within the city of Chicago to not only get better rates on our contracts, but also to ensure that our departments are also being leveraged as relates to centralization of contracts that many departments might currently enter into separately. And so that's the grunt work that happens in the background. It's not a line item in the budget, but it will lead to what we believe will be significant savings over time.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
This is also on the E&Y hearing that's happening today. Are there recommendations? I know you said last week that there's 80 million in savings and efficiencies from that report in this budget, but are there recommendations from that report that for whatever reason are not in the 2026 budget that you would consider incorporating that could be done immediately if there was political will for it?
Well, the whole point of the report was to find ways in which we can have structural transformation to our budget. As our budget director has just articulated, it's a process. There are certain recommendations that have been put forward that the report in and of itself recognizes that there has to be a strategic way in which we implement and engage with all of these systems, right? So if something comes out that is in the report that we should review again, I've said this from the very beginning, it's my values that I don't negotiate, right? The details we can work through.
And lastly, also wanted to get your reaction on 8 Democrats breaking ranks to vote to reopen the government without Democrats getting that guarantee of extended healthcare tax credits. And I know people are hurting with SNAP and the O'Hare and Midway delays, but do you have a reaction? Do you think that was prudent of those Democrats, including Illinois Senator Dick Durbin?
Well, look, this is the position that the President of the United States of America has placed the American people in the midst of, right? This is the type of turmoil that he has caused. And do I think at a time in which working families are struggling right now, that this is the time to, see the cost of healthcare go up? Of course not. And I was just with some seniors on Friday, and the number of seniors who are hurting because they didn't get their full benefit of SNAP, or some families, received less than half. And so this is the chaos that has been caused by the President of the United States of America, and it's literally pitting poor people against working class people at a time in which billionaires are running away with more revenue and upstream than we've seen ever in the history of America. So, this is yet another example of why, our vision here in the city of Chicago and the budget that I put forward is designed to protect all of Chicago. Look, we can't control the things that are going on at the federal level. What we can do, though, is challenge those large corporations who are receiving tax breaks from the federal government at a time in which people are barely able to make the ends meet, that this budget secures all of Chicago, and it challenged those with means to pay their fair share.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
I want to go back to the events on Saturday in Little Village. You've seen the videos. Did you see anything about the actions specifically of Chicago police officers that raises concerns in your mind that they violated the welcoming city ordinance?
The welcoming city ordinance, I'm confident that there's no violation there. And we're always looking to see where we can make adjustments. Our police department did not enforce civil immigration policy or law. We don't do that. Their job, of course, is to minimize the chaos that's being provocated by a very demented individual.
Are you concerned, as you've worked for these many years now, to restore trust between the Chicago Police Department and the communities? There are many people who've told me that they are angered by what they see Chicago police officers do. And as you said, the number of 911 calls is dropping. Are you worried that one casualty of these immigration raids will be sort of any improvement between the levels of trust between the Chicago Police Department and the people of Chicago?
Look, we have worked exceptionally hard to restore the trust between law enforcement and the community. I am absolutely concerned that what Border Patrol, under the direction of Bovino, under the direction of his king, President Trump, that has ensued the great deal of chaos that he is trying to promulgate throughout the entire country. Yes, I'm concerned about that. And that's why we're going to continue to review all of these actions. But what I can say is this president has unleashed Bovino to unleash tear gas on police officers and babies. And then they have the temerity to take a picture in front of one of our public assets. There are horrific pictures that exist within America and American society, graphic ones, from lynchings to black children being prevented from entering into a public institution. What Bovino and the Border Patrol are executing right now have the same grotesque proclivity as those who have worked incredibly hard to dehumanize historically people who have been placed in the margins. It's sick.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
The Finance Committee just advanced money for a field house in the 17 ward. Was that field house a sweetener to get Alderman David Moore on board for the 2025 budget or for this next budget?
So Alderman Moore has been working hard for, having more recreational space in the 17th ward, which is aligned with my vision for Chicago. We have to invest in our public spaces, particularly at a time in which the Trump administration has demonstrated a great deal of animus towards what should be designed for the public good. This is just another example of our commitment to make sure that there are safe spaces across the entire city of Chicago for the people of Chicago. I just did a community town hall there in the 17th ward where over 100 people showed up, and what they said over and over again, we need our public spaces to be made well, or even new spaces, of course, to continue to make people whole. And so this is a part of our vision to build a safe and affordable big city in America, and I'm glad that you're noticing that.
What do you hope comes out of these EY hearings today? And what do you think will happen? What will Alderman find money on the table?
Well, I mean, I can't, I'm not going to predict. I think I would much rather predict whether or not the Bulls' losing streak will end tonight. If there's any way, if Wemby could come here but decide he doesn't want to play, look, Wemby, why don't you just sit this one out tonight? Look, what's going to come out of the report is that, first of all, that folks are going to see why we made this investment. That's the big thing. We put forth this investment that some had some trepidation around, which, sure, I mean, I get that. But we've already demonstrated that we're willing to implement the very ideas that came from this report. I just hope that they spend the same amount of time in this EY report also looking at how corporate interests are continuing to get away without having to pay their fair share in taxes. I think all of it requires our attention at this time, but I'm grateful that so many aldermen are as meticulous as they are under my administration.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
Alderman Villegas is proposing a $1.25 package delivery tax as a possible revenue option. Are you considering it, and is this even possible to do without approval from Springfield?
As of now, we don't have any indication that this is something that we can institute without Springfield.
Gotcha. Librarians and other unionized employees criticizing the proposed CPL budget, which eliminates 69 vacant positions, and notably a 50% cut in the collections budget, $10 million to $5 million. Are you reconsidering these cuts, or is this set in stone for the library?
Well, look, it's a proposal. We're going to continue to look and explore many different ways in which we can fully fund all of our systems, particularly at a time in which we do know, again, that the interests of corporations continue to be prioritized over working people. We're going to use every tool that's available to ensure that we stabilize the library system as well. As you may know, that right now the structural deficit that it's working under is causing a deal of weight as well. That's something else that we're looking to repair.
And just real quick, you alluded to Bovino being outside the bean today taking photos. Any reaction? One agent said, say Little Village, and they all chanted Little Village, and apparently some kind of photo op. Any reaction to that this morning?
They said what?
Little Village. They said, everybody say Little Village, and then instead of cheese, assuming some reference to the neighborhood and their activity there.
Yeah, look, this is ugly behavior. It's something that, it's unfortunate that this is the type of provocation that the President of the United States of America has endorsed. We don't do that in the city of Chicago. We believe that all of our neighbors deserve to be protected and loved and supported. That's why this budget is about protecting all of Chicago.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
Can you tell me how many aldermen you have met with one-on-one to talk about their concerns they might have for the budget? And is there an exchange back and forth where you're willing to hear out what they might want in return for a vote of support?
Well, look, I've met with a number of alders who've expressed, points of this budget that they're really excited about. And there is a lot to be excited about in this budget. The fact that we're committing our work to community safety and mental health expansion. The Department of the Environment is being restored. Now that we're moving in phase 2, we have, found a pathway within this budget to be able to right size overtime for policing. Phase 2, the civilianization. I can go on and on. I mean, most of what's in this budget, people wholeheartedly understand where we're going as a city. As far as, again, some of the details of the budget, there's always going to be some back and forth around that. I think I'm a pretty good listener. I think I've gotten better as mayor of the city of Chicago. And, it's just one of those elements that we're going to talk to as many alders as possible throughout this entire process, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes in smaller groups. If they're not talking to me, I can tell you who else they're talking to. Sorry, Annette, but she does a really good job, and our team is always available. We use the full force of government to engage with all of our alders. They'll tell you, previous administrations did not talk the way we engage with alders. They'll tell you that. Many of them have admitted that they have worked through multiple budgets.
I think some would say otherwise, though, too.
That they have talked to other ones?
That they haven't had a good conversation with you about the budget, or they didn't always feel like you talked to them. So I'm curious.
I can't control how someone feels. There's a difference between me doing it and someone feeling a way about it. I'm saying that they got no interaction whatsoever. There's a big difference between someone leaving the conversation and feeling a way about it versus not even having the conversation at all. That's the distinction.
Okay. And can you talk about the conversations you might have had with like a McDonald's or some of those big companies that are really pushing back at the budget because they're concerned it's going to, that $21 head tax is going to hurt them?
Well, look, I mean, here's what I've said repeatedly. When you talk to these corporate leaders, their number one issue is safety. That's what they talk to me about. And we're addressing this. This community safety surcharge will be the largest fund for community safety at the municipal level anywhere in the country. That's what their top priority is. That's what mine is. In fact, you may have seen, we made an announcement today where for the first time downtown, first time in over 50 years, where once the East Coast rings in the new year, the city of Chicago will be the destination for 30 million people plus to view the new year coming in during Central Standard Time. What's interesting, though, is a report was released a couple of weeks ago that said that the city of Chicago is the top winter destination than anywhere in the country. They talked about our attractions, they talked about our activities, but they also expressed some concern about safety. That is still an area that we have to improve upon. The best thing that we can do for business is to make sure that the perception and the reality of safety is actually being realized. That's the conversation. That's the top conversation. That is the thing that matters the most, and that's what my focus is.
Thank you, Chair.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
I'm distracted by your suit. I have to be honest with you.
I did dress warm today, sir.
It's got this Sherlock thing happening, though.
Yes.
It's just like now I feel like you're going to do this investigatory question.
I need to class myself up every chance I get, sir.
You look good. Good
Appreciate
to see you,
it.
Waylon.
You as well, sir. Do you have any other attractions that you think Greg Bovini should visit while he's in town, while they're doing photo ops at the Bean? Indiana,
Yeah, I mean, look.
the airport,
Right.
the other airport.
Right,
What do you think?
Look, he just needs to go away. Every year there's a list that I put together of people who should just go away. He's in the running to be at the top of the list. I mean, because here's someone who is, he's provoked terror on people. And, I've seen a lot of bad behavior from human beings over the course of my study of just history. Even when he was on his way into federal court, he paraded down the street and saluted individuals. And then they go on social media and put hip hop music to their terror in Black and brown communities. That's not even a dog whistle anymore. That's some real racist, jacked up stuff that he is engaged in. And the fact that we're putting Black men in chokeholds, ripping Black children out in the middle of the night, zip tying them, putting families who are documented or ostensibly undocumented into the back of vans. That's terror. That's not who we should be as a country. And it's unfortunate because you have a president who is such a brittle man. And it's unfortunate because now you have these men who are weak and insecure are using a uniform to administer terror. Like, that's what we fight against in other nations. That's why I called for the United Nations Human Rights Council to come and investigate the fact that people are going hungry and families are being ripped apart. And we have to have a universal standard for human rights. Otherwise, they're meaningless. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'll put you down for one of the airports then after the
Right.
after the deal is made in Washington. And can we expect to see you up next to Ryan Seacrest at midnight on the 31st?
Let me just say, I am already looking for an outfit as meticulous as yours.
All right, to Alice.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Oh, good afternoon. There's a whole other side of the room over here. All right.
CTU President Stacey Davis Gates sent a letter to Board of Ed President Sean Hardin last week criticizing the superintendent search process as untransparent and says the authority to appoint the CEO rests with you, not the board. Do you agree with these concerns, and why or why not?
Well, look, my ultimate desire is to actually have someone who is heading up our schools that can transition us out of mayoral control into an independent body. That's the ultimate goal. It's what I fought for. But we're also making sure that we have someone who understands why it's important that we expand sustainable community schools, someone who can advocate in a very emphatic way for Springfield to lean in more, to make sure that our schools are fully funded across the state, but particularly here in Chicago. That's what the focus is. And, look, you're going to have folks who are going to continue to advocate on behalf of their particular constituency, and that's her responsibility to advocate on behalf of her members. I'm going to advocate on behalf of the people of Chicago to ensure that we have leadership that reflects the values of working people.
I understand that finalists are being interviewed this week. What's your office's involvement in that? And if along the course of this process, you do find that the process has been untransparent or not following the state law, would you consider scrapping it and starting the search process over?
Well, as I understand, the process hasn't ended, right? And I know there are a number of people who would love to be able to serve this city, particularly at a time in which, again, my budget is putting forth the largest single investment in our public schools in the history of Chicago. So there's a reason why a lot of folks want this position, because they're going to have a mayor who believes in public education, who believes in our workforce, right? So I believe that process is still open, and, I'm looking forward to passing this budget so that, this school year in particular can continue to move forward without layoffs or cuts to services.
What do you mean by process still open?
I understand that people can still apply if they want. Yeah, I'm not aware of a process that has come to conclusion.
How you doing, Mayor Johnson?
I'm doing actually well, thank you. Thank you for asking.
I'll be FOIAing your list of people you think should go away here at the end of this meeting. But I do want to follow up on Alice's question. Do you think that the search process is making a mistake by omitting Dr. Macklin King from consideration for the full-time job?
Look, first of all, the interim structure that we have right now has been under a degree of stress, right? We had the transition from someone. We, of course, had to make sure that there was a budget that was passed. Obviously, their budget is still contingent upon the city's budget, right? It's, again, not the best way that I would encourage someone to balance a budget off of the projection or hope and prayer. However, be that as it may, I did my part. I kept my word as I work to ensure that our public education system is fully supported and funded. Ultimately, the state has a responsibility in this moment to do more, and they can and they should. As far as, any particular candidate one way or the other, here's what my focus is. I want to make sure that the board can transition into full autonomy. We have just a little bit over a year to do that, and this process will continue to play out. There are others that will continue to apply and seek the position, but in no way, do I have a strong opinion about any of the individuals that are making their way through a process.
And with the first snowfall of the season, I'm wondering if you and your team are trying to find ways or thinking about ways to find money for the sidewalk clearing pilot that City Council approved, that I know which money has been redirected in recent time.
I'm real encouraged by, how Commissioner Stollard has shown up. I'm glad that he's rocking the beard game as well. We're going to work on that with Director Velez. It's not a job requirement, but we just look better in beards, personally. That's a compliment for you as well.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
Right. Look, I believe that government has to become far more innovative. And, plowing the sidewalks is something that I believe can make a difference in neighborhoods, particularly where, our population is aging, where there are clear challenges of accessibility that exist in terms of like what this budget will look like at the very end. There's still some time for us to negotiate around these details, but it is something that I do believe that as we begin to move forward as a city, we have to find more innovative and creative ways to show up for people. That's why I think it's fascinating that you have a group of alders that are still calling for cuts, and the people of Chicago are saying that they want more services and services to be directed in a way that we have never done before. So my approach is to look for the resources where they are likely to be, and that's with our billionaire class and our incredibly large corporations that actually could do more in this moment.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
On that same topic, Joe Ferguson has suggested that if more of the Ernst & Young recommendations were implemented, you could avoid the head tax. Is that true, and is it just a matter of where priorities are placed?
It's a matter of priorities. I mean, here's the bottom line. No time ever that I'm aware of has an administration brought together a cross-sector of leaders to actually find ways to make government better. And this is ostensibly the motivation behind his entity. It's never even called for that. So first of all, he's welcome. I think the second point is it's a matter of priority, right? And the cuts that people are talking about, they're talking about cutting in our corporate fund, which overwhelmingly funds our public safety apparatus. I'm not going to put forth a budget that undermines our work to driving violence down in the city of Chicago. It's just too important. And so instead of finding ways to clock for the ultra-rich and large corporations, I'm always going to stand firm and clock for working people.
And one more, a follow-up to the CPS questions. It seems as if two of the finalists right now are from Denver and New York. Would you like to see the head of CPS come from Chicago and understand the unique nature of Chicago public schools?
Well, Chicago public schools are certainly unique, right? And we are at a critical moment in our city's history as we transition into complete autonomy of the board and its gradual weaning off of its dependency and its reliance upon the city of Chicago, and it will need more support from Springfield. I'm not aware of a scenario in which people have been deemed as finalists. I understand one individual that was deemed as a finalist is no longer in the running, so it's hard to speak to that classification or characterization because that just has not been what has been reported back to me.
But would you like to see the person be a Chicago?
Oh, thank you. Look, I'm looking for someone who understands the values of working people in this city, sustainable community schools, investing in special education, bilingual education, someone who's willing to be a partner with labor, right? There's been, tensions that have existed for a long time in this city. Schools have been closed. We know that Black women overwhelmingly have borne the brunt, and Black children, of school privatization and closures. I've taken, arrests on behalf of the people of Chicago for our schools. I've gone on a hunger strike on behalf of the people of the city of Chicago. So I'm looking for someone who's going to champion the very things that, made it possible for a former public school teacher to become the mayor of the greatest freaking city in the world.
Hi, Mayor.
Hey.
Maybe a question for you or Budget Director Guzman.
Okay.
When we look at what Joe Ferguson kind of summarized from the Ernst & Young report, it seems like their projections for efficiencies are greatly, outranking what you all came up with. Were these just not practical, or some of these, frankly, just ignored because they don't fit in with, your ideals or what you want to fund and what you want to do?
Well, first of all, nothing is being ignored. That's why the report exists. And there's one more that's coming out. Annette?
I haven't seen what Joe Ferguson has put out because he frankly doesn't send us anything prior to putting it out.
But he kind of summarized the recommendations for their efficiencies. Some of them, there's no efficiencies that are reflected in the budget, and others are far below what the report recommended.
Yeah,
That's the
so
problem.
again, I haven't seen what Joe Ferguson's put out because he hasn't sent it to us. What I would say is there's a difference between someone looking at a report or making estimations on their own about what a savings is and us actually doing the work. And so when it came to, you're actually looking at 3 commissioners sitting up here who we actually worked with, who EY worked with, who we're in conversations with, and we run our own numbers, and our numbers are actually correct. It is a question of priorities. It's also a question of structural phasing. And so while someone might think that we can do something in 1 year, we actually run a city, and we actually have to think about implementation. We also have to think about phasing of recommendations, and we also frankly have to think about priorities. And so for us, I will take a look at whatever Joe Ferguson put out. I wish he had sent it to us prior to putting it out, because we could have had a conversation. We could have had a conversation about it, and we could have probably informed him about what's practical and what's actually available to do. But I'll take a look at it. I will say that I'm very confident in our numbers, but I'm also confident in the options that we did implement in this budget. And we're also confident in the structured phasing of recommendations that will start in 2026 that will yield savings in future years.
And Mayor, for you, I know you've defended the head tax, but there's the talk that maybe you're considering modifying it or providing some exemptions in there, and maybe raising the cloud tax to make up the difference. Are you looking at changing the head tax proposal and the PBLT?
Well, look, we still believe that the best way to balance our budget is challenging larger corporations to pay their fair share. As I've said from the very beginning, my values I protect. Working through the details, if there are proposals that allow for us to continue to invest in youth employment, CVI, protecting survivors of domestic and gender-based violence, ensuring that we're investing in the mental health and well-being of our first responders. That's the goal. That's the goal, to create the largest single fund for community safety anywhere in this country from a municipality. So if there are details that can be negotiated and some considerations, I'm always open to that.
Are you proposing some of those yourself, though?
Again, we're looking at everything. All right. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it. Go Bulls. All right.
So you're one-handed.
Whatever.